All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, and good morning to all of you here on a Saturday. We are live in the 702. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. We are live on Facebook Live, also on Twitch, YouTube, and also on the Twitter's Periscope. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter is where you can like and follow all of us on social media platforms. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channels of both the Snake Sports Talk Show and the home of the Snake Sports Talk Show. That is the Spotlight Sports Network. And also follow us on Spotify. We have podcast episodes that we post up on a daily as well. If for those of you who can't catch the live streams, we got you covered. We got it all up on our podcast episodes. I am stacked this whole weekend. Now, I know, and I apologize to everybody on the previous weekend. I tried to at least fit some sort of episode in there, but unfortunately, things kind of came up. But I'm here with you today. I'm here with you this morning, and I've got a lot to talk about. And the first thing I want to get off my chest here, let's go ahead and cue this. So last Monday, there was a lot that I have seen, and there was a lot that I wanted to talk about. And yes, there is one team in particular. I've been talking about them all year long. This was kind of just the type of year and the type of performance I figured I'd see. Tons and tons of uncertainties. Remember, I mentioned about this before because there are a ton of teams who just aren't cutting any breaks in the NFL. Okay, Raiders can't really catch a break with just the schedule itself, and then not to mention just NFL policies and so on. But I've got a really good special guest coming on with me here in just about a few minutes. But we have that. Philadelphia can't seem to catch a break with all of these numerous injuries that just continuously happen. It's like it's a complete curse for the team. But then you're also looking at the Dallas Cowboys, a team that everybody is like, oh, well, look at that. They got Amari Cooper. They got Dak Prescott. They got CeeDee Lamb. They've been distracted from the entire problem that has been going on in their organization for almost the last 2 seasons. Okay. You can have all of the offense that you want, but the problem of it is Byron Jones was one of the top corners that the team had. Not to mention, they lost a bunch of other good secondary players. And now I barely even know who their best secondary is outside of Trayvon Diggs. And at the same time, the offensive line is not the same. Travis Frederick, longtime center, he's retired. Tyron Smith is not healthy. Now Zach Martin is hurt, and now you're not getting the same Dallas Cowboys offensive line. And which puts us to the point that Dak Prescott is hurt for the rest of the year. This is one of the things that when you look at some of these teams in the NFL, how they reshape themselves. Listen, there are bright futures happening for all of these teams. The Giants, I can't even explain about this team because sometimes there are times where Daniel Jones actually looks his best, and then there are times that Daniel Jones doesn't kind of look like his best. He's almost like a mirroring image of Eli Manning, which I will say this now, I think the Giants are out of the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes because I don't think they should give up on a quarterback this easily. They've done this with Eli Manning for years. And I have a feeling they'll do this with Daniel Jones. But Philadelphia, for as tough as the injuries come, Carson Wentz is by far one of the toughest quarterbacks I ever see in the NFL. I mean, we watched that game Thursday night. A clutch play drive, but yet nobody seems to be giving him credit. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was great. I thought it was something that I know about Carson Wentz, that he comes into the clutch. But then when we come to the Cowboys, And I'll be honest with you about this. The Cowboys I mentioned in the last episode are like that overpaid house with a plumbing issue. The only thing that Jerry Jones is doing with this team is he's continuously repainting the house. Let's get more wide receivers. Let's get ourselves a new running back. Let's get ourselves this and that. But then you don't focus on the main plumbing problem. So the more and more the plumbing issue gets worse, the more paints you waste. This is why I think at this point, this is all something that I believe is all fallen onto Jerry Jones's hands. Because the fact of the matter is, Jerry will never have a coach that challenges him. The last two coaches who did that, they won Super Bowls and championships. That was Bill Parcells and Jimmy Johnson. Jason Garrett. I mean, good. I think he was a real good offensive coordinating mind, but just really couldn't close the games out as well. And then there's Mike McCarthy, an outdated coach who, by the way, I'll be talking a little bit more about this because I feel like that this whole divorce between him and Aaron Rodgers, it's so lopsided. Aaron Rodgers is absolutely loving the coaching in Green Bay, despite the loss, that ugly loss to Tampa Bay. But still, McCarthy's outdated. Mike Nolan is outdated. And this whole Cowboys franchise, listen, the two most expensive franchises outside of the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Yankees and the LA Lakers. The Lakers, it took them 6 years before they could get back in to the playoffs. What's going on, Marty Noob? What's happening, man? 6 years. And do you even remember some of those young kids? D'Angelo Russell, Julius Randle, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball. They, after Kobe, the late Kobe Bryant, had retired, this Lakers organization, the most expensive franchise, couldn't get things right. Not until LeBron James arrived. They attracted the brand. He understood what the plan was, and he went with the plan. First year, didn't make the playoffs, but it was all due to injuries, but also too, it dealt with a little bit of inexperiences. Then here comes Anthony Davis. Now I feel like this Lakers team is very interesting. How about the New York Yankees? Okay, for years, as long as I have watched the Yankees, they have had superstars everywhere. Bernie Williams, Chuck Knobloch, Paul O'Neill, Derek Jeter, Mike Mussina, Jorge Posada, Jason Giambi, Mark Teixeira, Curtis Grant. There are so many superstars that the Yankees had, and they didn't care how much they were paying. But now they don't even have all of those old vet superstars anymore. Now, thanks to analytics and statistics, now they have to go the other way and now start building these young baby bombers like Gary Sanchez or Gleyber Torres. And so the Yankees, they got this right. It may not look like it, but they got this right. And then you got the Lakers. Lakers spent 6 years before they could even make it into the playoffs, and they finally got this right. They finally got this right. But when are the Dallas Cowboys really going to get this right? Jerry Jones doesn't like to be challenged. Mike McCarthy, no matter what he says about, he loves this new stuff, I don't even think he does. He's still stuck in the Stone Age, not even evolutioning to where we're in this position where analytics is a big thing, and then offense is such a huge part of it. And they're not even running the football with their star running back in Zeke. So I feel like if this is the Dallas Cowboys' ways of rebuilding, they're going to be stuck. They're going to be stuck. And you overpaid for a lot of these players who I don't even believe needed the contracts now. You overpaid Zeke too early. You overpaid Jalen Smith only because it felt like he never got a chance due to the torn ACL. And now look at where the Cowboys are. Now Byron Jones is gone. Now you need to revamp that secondary. You now need to revamp the offensive line to protect Dak Prescott. Now Dak is looking and saying, this is probably the reason why I had concerns of why you guys didn't pay me. So at this point, if this is what the Dallas Cowboys need to do, I think they need to tear down this whole plan and they need to start back from scratch. The Lakers did it, and they're maintaining they won a championship. The Yankees, for years since having veterans, they did it. They're still working their ways to potentially win a championship with this young group. But this is kind of something that, Jerry Jones, he really needs to work this up and work this up quick. All right, let me shift over here. So, out of all these quarterbacks, we've seen a lot of them come up clutch in late game situations. Okay, and I watched one in particular, and he still ain't getting the credit he deserves. That's Carson Wentz. And again, even after I just finished talking about the Cowboys, Philadelphia, for as much of the injury plagues as they go through, what else is there really to say about Carson Wentz? I mean, this is one of the reasons that I'm speaking this out now, because during the NFL's top 100, he was a snub, along with Jared Goff and Matt Ryan. But if you think about it, here's what's funny. Tom Brady has had multiple times in his career coming up clutch in fourth quarter situations. Okay? And what did we all say? Oh my God, it's Tom Brady. He's amazing. He knows how to do it. Russell Wilson, another guy that knows how to run out the pocket, and he knows exactly how to open up for receivers. Fourth quarter comebacks. Oh, man, Russ, man, you let him cook. He's going to let that thing run, and then you got DK Metcalf. It's awesome. But then when we look at Carson Wentz, and after that play he made to Boston Scott to getting Philadelphia the lead and the win, we're like, well, he's only good when he's in the late quarter. What? If anything, from all these quarterbacks that I have seen, Carson Wentz is by far the toughest, if not the smartest quarterback that I see playing the NFL. I'm not saying that he's right there along the lines of Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or a lot of these big-time quarterbacks that are here in the league. All I'm saying is that Carson Wentz, he's the type of quarterback that does not give up on team, and he does not give up on plays, regardless of what the performance is that the Philadelphia Eagles are going through this season. Okay. And this is why I'm just like, when I look at this team and with the amount of injuries that they have on all their starters, by the way, somebody's got to give credit to their practice squad. I don't know how they're doing it, and I don't know how that they're really shaping these guys, but you're talking about Carson Wentz leading the way with a young kid named Travis Fulgham, okay, who came off this Detroit Lions squad that even Detroit is not even the best well-ran franchise, but yet he's still working well with Carson Wentz. You got J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, young kid, practice squad. He's making the cut. Oh, and let's not forget about another guy who was big in Green Bay known as Richard Rodgers. Okay, he dropped out of the practice squad in Washington. And even with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goddard being hurt, Richard Rodgers was targeted multiple times by Carson Wentz. It's just like, you put a practice squad in front of Carson Wentz, he's going to make it happen. Why do you think last year the Eagles finished the way they did at 9-7 and made the playoffs? Better than a healthy Dallas Cowboys team, right? But this is one of the things that you look at with Carson Wentz. Is it about time we give him at least a little bit of credit from here? Because the last thing I want to hear is, oh, well, Carson Wentz is only good when he's in a late quarter. You sure about that? An arm strength, not to mention utilizing every single weapon he's got. I mean, my God, he threw a game-winning touchdown to a 5'8" running back, Boston Scott, who is also coming off the Saints practice squad. I don't know how they're doing it with their practice squad in Philadelphia, but you know what? That's a team I probably would give A+ credit for, because if you could do that without all those starters and make it happen with these practice squad guys, I must say there is something in the DNA with some of these organizations. Coming up next, so I've been watching a lot of this World Series, and there's been a lot of interesting takes that I've gotten from it. And man, it's been exciting. We've got fans in the stands now. The Dodgers really look like they're in the driver's seat. But there are a few takeaways that I'll take from that World Series. That is coming up next. And also, I've got a really good special guest, Raider Jay, coming in here. We're going to be talking some Raiders. We're going to be talking about some Portland Trailblazer stuff, and even some things around the league that we could be looking forward to coming into tomorrow's matchups. That is all coming up next. By the way, I do have a special we've got a special thing going on here at the Spotlight Sports Network presented by Thrive Fantasy, and I will be having a forecast on that and, of course, the late hour of the prime predictions. You don't want to miss it, but check it out, guys.
What's up, fantasy champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now, with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
All right, for those of you who are joining in here on the show, thank you so much for coming on in. We really do appreciate you guys. Definitely like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for all the latest notification on future shows and also live play-by-play reactions from your favorite hosts here on the Spotlight Sports Network. And definitely send us likes and follow us on all of our social media platforms. We really do appreciate it, you guys. So there was a question that was left out just before the break. One of them was asking about the Antonio Brown situation with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Just as a little quick skit. So, listen, I'm just the type of person that's very optimistic, especially when it comes to a guy like Antonio Brown. Because my only thing of it is, and I've said this about so many numerous players, no matter what the sport is, I've been saying numerous things about Manny Machado and the Padres because, number one, me personally, I don't like his attitude. I sometimes don't like his demeanor, and I don't really like kind of how he carries things out. But the other part of me that loves it is, man, he's got a ridiculous offensive bat, and he's got a really good defensive glove at third base. He's a love-hate type player. Then you look at Josh Gordon. Okay, and Josh Gordon, I mean, love or hate him. You love him because the kid's got a lot of potential. He's got great hands. He's got great speed. But the one thing that people hate is the fact that he just gets in trouble for some of the things that, that goes on in his life. Tries to get his life shaped together. But sometimes when it comes to certain players like that, it's difficult. So this situation now with Antonio Brown, he's officially a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. And here's what's interesting about this. Seattle at one point wanted a guy like Antonio Brown. Because here's what's interesting about Russell Wilson. He's probably one of the most kind-hearted people you'd ever meet in your life. And all he looks for is guys that he's willing to open opportunities with. Now, remember, they've got a superstar receiver in DK Metcalf. And then you got Tyler Lockett. You got a lot of different young receivers that Russ likes to throw to. I thought it would have been interesting. But at the same time, I kind of felt a little caution. I felt a little cautionary about this. Because knowing the antics and knowing some of the activities that Antonio Brown had gone through since the Steelers, since the Raiders, and then even up to the point where he was in New England. This was one of the interesting things that I just really could not really fathom in my head. And Antonio Brown, my knock on him is it's never about his skill. I think if he kept his head leveled, he's one of the top 5 best wide receivers in the league. Speed, catch. I mean, he's ridiculously good. The only knock I have on Antonio Brown is what's going on through his mind. I mean, the antics from Pittsburgh, which, by the way, I mean, you look at Le'Veon Bell, and Le'Veon Bell is in Kansas City. He's barely getting any snaps. Le'Veon Bell is not the same top running back that he once was years ago when he was with Pittsburgh. Now, you could say what you want to, that, Le'Veon Bell, he was lowballed, didn't really get a contract. I get that part. And I do think there is a part where the organization holds themselves accountable. But at the same time, you just think of the decisions you make. I do believe that in life, the decisions you make will shape you. Because it's meant for you to either be a growth process, or it may turn around and be the opposite, to where now it just kind of breaks you down in so many different ways. Le'Veon Bell had an offensive line with Pittsburgh at one point. Then he goes and takes his money worth to the Jets. Team barely has an offensive line. Doesn't really have the best offensive-minded coach in Adam Gase. And he's injury prone. And then the second he leaves, where, by the way, the Jets made the dumb decision of overpaying him, and now there's $15 million out the door. But then goes to Kansas City, and yes, doing it because, you got the best quarterback in the league in Patrick Mahomes, but you're barely getting any snaps. And that was one of the part that I just felt like, had he not left Pittsburgh, he still would be a top 10 running back in this league. Antonio Brown, had he not left Pittsburgh, and listen, we all know Big Ben is difficult to work with. But they did have an offense. They had an offense, regardless of what people say. But if he didn't leave Pittsburgh, he'd still be considered one of the top 5 receivers in the league. The whole Raiders shenanigans with the icy foot, the whole helmet antic, that just wasn't Antonio Brown. We all know that could not possibly be Antonio Brown. But then shifting over and then going to New England, where he's around Tom, and then more antics come about, and then he's released by New England. Then the league now cracks down on him. It's a pretty risky situation for Tampa Bay. But I will say this, because all of this I look at is Tom Brady. If he makes this work, because this is a stacked wide receiver core with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, and a lot of other young receivers like Miller and so many others. I mean, the only thing you can hope for is that this is a positive change for Antonio Brown. The only thing. But of course, if more antics come about, I'm not going to be the person to say, I told you so. But we're going to be the people to say, you knew what you signed up for, and this is what you're getting. Okay, I'm not worried about the skill set, but I am worried about the maturity issues. So I've got a really good guest coming on here, and he's brand spanking new to the network. He is a diehard Raiders fan. He's also a diehard Portland Trailblazers fan, a guy reigning in Portland, Oregon. And I think he's got a lot to say here with this Raiders stuff. And so joining me now here on the Global Satellite Network presented by StreamYard, it's Raider J. John Francis coming on. John, how are you doing, man? How are things looking out in Portland?
Man, I'm good. I'm good. It's a little cold out here. The temperatures dropped quite a bit, a little bit early in the season, but yeah, I'm good, man. It's early and I'm up.
Man, I can't wait for it to start getting cooler from here. This next week, we're actually supposed to be dropping in 55s. So it's going to be pretty refreshing weather out here in this desert. So let's talk about this because you had a lot to say with the latest news upon, the Raiders offensive linemen, they're put on COVID list. And then there was so much more about potential punishments by it. When I started seeing this, I felt like the punishments and the stuff that was kind of going on kind of seemed a little bit unfair to me. What was your thought? Because you ranted about this and kind of how all of this was kind of spurring about. And how I think that the Raiders were going to carry this out amongst the league, and not to mention tomorrow's game against the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yeah. So obviously it's frustrating, right? Because you essentially lose for practice your entire offensive line, one of your key defensive players, and Jonathan Abram. And now all of a sudden there's an investigation. Okay, well, that's fine. Do an investigation, do what you got to do. But in addition to that, now it come to find out none of the players are going to be able to come back until actually Sunday. They won't even be able to practice on Saturday, as long as they don't test positive for the coronavirus. But you kind of, as the NFL, you put salt on the wound by, instead of postponing the game and pushing it out until Monday, you pull it back and pull them out of Sunday Night Football into an afternoon game at 1:00. So now they've got even less time to get prepared as players. So they've got to go out there with virtually no practice because they got sent home on Tuesday. So they only really had Monday. So virtually no practice for the week. And the little bit of time that they would have had, to prepare for Sunday night, you take that away from them too. And we haven't even gotten started on any possible punishments. Now, I find it very interesting that they do that to the Raiders, but every other team that has been in this situation has got their game postponed and pushed out. Now, we don't know if they're actually going to do that. I mean, here it is, 7:30 Pacific time on Saturday morning, and there hasn't been any word about a postponement. So, I mean, I don't know if they're going to hold out until tomorrow morning or if they're just waiting for another player to test positive. But regardless, anybody that made the reserve COVID list and, basically was sat out until almost up until game time, they were postponing. So it's frustrating.
Yeah, I can imagine the frustration, especially with this Raiders team that, they're all in on this whole Las Vegas experience, and stuff like that. And I felt like this could have been an exciting game on a Sunday night because think about it, Tom Brady on a new team, but he's in a new city location in Las Vegas that it's the first time that, they'll ever be able to showcase something like that. But then at the same time, of course, for a lot of Raider fans, the concerns are, well, hate to bring up old bad memories, but the whole tuck rule, this and that, and just all this rap with the NFL. And so, I kind of think about this because now with those offensive linemen out, and I was always familiar with some of the teams that the second they get hit with the COVID, they go home, quarantine. By the time that they test negative, they come back, they practice, and then they may be ready to go. Now it doesn't even seem to be the case with some of these linemen with a short amount of time. So do you feel like in this game in particular, because we know what Todd Bowles is capable of in the defensive side for Tampa Bay, but do you feel like that could be something that could affect Derek Carr's passing game?
Yeah, definitely. As far as them not being able to, to practice and prepare, I mean, every team is different. these guys are professionals. Let's just be honest. They get paid just like everybody else. They're professionals. They're doing what they can to prepare. There's been reports that they're doing it virtually because they are quarantined. They are isolated, so they are virtually preparing. Watching tape, doing what it is. So the coaches are definitely working with them. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Nothing replaces being on the field, practicing live, doing the walkthroughs, doing all that kind of stuff. And John Gruden is very, very when it comes to the offense, he likes to script out the games. So he has it basically scripted, especially that first drive. It's all scripted. There's not a lot of switching it up and changing it up. He's very meticulous when it comes to planning the offense and the offensive scheme and all that kind of stuff. So nothing is going to beat them being on the field, practicing with their teammates, and doing that. And now at this point, it's not going to happen. So especially with this Tampa Bay defensive line, it could be potentially at least at the very beginning. That's not to say they're not going to adapt and make those changes and stuff like that along the way. But at least at the very beginning, there may be a little bit of struggles. And the last thing you want to do is see your quarterback go down. That also he could possibly get injured. So it's definitely going to be a rocky start, I feel like, but hopefully they've done everything they can to get as prepared as they can and minimize that hit.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting look for this Raiders, but something I think, Vegas fans would be excited for, and just kind of seeing how all of this may pan out. John Francis, as also known as AKA Raider J on My City and My Game, joining the show here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. So let's just kind of shift over to the NBA, because I know we kind of talked about it off the air at one point. And just actually first officially meeting you, we talked about this. But the Lakers, they won their championship, and this was kind of something that was an important year for them, despite everything that was going on during the whole year of 2020, then the shutdown, the passing of Kobe and Gigi Bryant and everything else. So they had a lot that was up on their shoulders that they needed to win. The one team that I focus on that you do cover is the Portland Trailblazers. Now, when I look at this team and how interesting they are, I've said this a couple times, they look and feel like the poor man's Golden State, because of the fact of Damian Lillard. He gets a lot of the credit that he deserves as a shooter. Then you got CJ McCollum, who's probably one of the best number twos to Damian Lillard. And then there are a couple of other young pieces. Now, we know we're in free agency. Now, if you look at how Portland shaped themselves up, now the unfortunate part is Damian Lillard getting hurt, and then he's out for the rest of the playoffs. What are some key things for Portland Trailblazers coming into the next season? And I know we've been talking about it because of the potentialities of when the season will start, but what are some things that may catch your attention that the Portland Trailblazers really need to address?
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, and this goes pretty much with any team, the team has to stay healthy. The Portland Trailblazers have been riddled with injury. First, you have Nurkic go down with that gruesome injury, a couple of seasons ago, not last season, but the season before, that put him out for the whole season. That was actually when they made that Western Conference push. So they did make it to the Western Conference Finals even without him, but having him, going up against the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals would have been the X factor. Mm-hmm. You also have Rodney Hood that goes out. So you lose your one of your forwards. So and a shooter. I mean, Rodney Hood was looking really, really good when he went down with that injury. So, and then of course you get your guys back last season, but of course, you have the bubble and all that kind of stuff that happened. Honestly, without the bubble, I don't feel like they would have even made the playoffs the way they were playing. So, you had guys coming back from injury and trying to get work back into it, Nurkic and so on. So the guys have to stay healthy. Mm-hmm. Unless you have a lot of depth like the Golden State Warriors, your players got to stay healthy. Even with the Lakers, I feel like the Lakers, winning this championship, they were able to stay healthy. If they would have gotten hit with some injuries, from some of their starters, if AD would have gone down, or LeBron, could be a different story. So definitely have to stay healthy, keep the guys on the field. I really feel like the defense has got to step up. We have got one of the best backcourts, if not the best backcourt right now in the NBA. But it doesn't mean anything without defense. So you have to tighten up the defense. The defensive struggles for the Portland Trailblazers have been atrocious. And every Portland Trailblazers fan, anybody that knows anything about basketball, they will go crazy when it comes to talking about, look, you score points, but you got to stop people from scoring points in order to win a game.
Right.
So the defense has to be shored up. I feel like they're just about one piece away. If they could find somebody to come in and play that extra role, one more piece, maybe bring over somebody in a trade or draft somebody in the draft. I feel like that really could shore it up. But ultimately, the coaching has to get better. And I feel like Damian Lillard there's some times where he is a great players coach. He's a great coach on the court. But I feel like there's sometimes where he kind of pulls back and he defers back to Terry Stotts. And that doesn't always translate well on the court. Sometimes you got to go against what the man is saying. Sometimes as a player, you see things, you have to take over, and you can see him do that sometimes. And those are the times where Dame time comes out. But then sometimes when it's a crucial moment and that needs to happen, it doesn't. He's a humble guy. He definitely doesn't want to, he respects Terry Stotts. He respects the organization, but I just feel like I want him to be more of that guy more often. And when it counts even more. So I think those are the main things. Damian Lillard needs to step up. They need to stay healthy, and they need to bring in one more piece.
Oh, and I couldn't agree more. And Portland's been the type of, they've been the type of team that's been very interesting, even from the last couple of seasons. I mean, Damian Lillard, I said this, I remember years ago, I used to say that I didn't think Portland would be the team that they are right now. And because of this, and this was the time when LaMarcus Aldridge was playing, and by the time he got traded to San Antonio, I felt like they were losing a good defensive piece. And that was kind of something that was going to be an interesting transition for Portland to really step up to become a competitive team. But now with Dame being shaped who he is, and I do agree with that, because there are some certain players I have concerns of when they have a tendency to disappear in some games, because they have to rely on coaching, they have to rely on this. And in crucial situations, and absolutely, you can put up all the points that you want, but the most important thing that you got to do is you got to shut games down. And if you don't do that, that's where, your Golden States, your Lakers, and Boston, a lot of teams, they'll come in and attack you at any point, because they'll take advantage of those takeaways, and then they'll get all of those important points, regardless if it's behind the arc or if it's within the paint. They'll attack you in any way that they can. And that's exactly what Portland really, truly has to shape up. I've been talking about, the last game on Monday night, which I thought, oh man, I thought it was going to gouge my eyes out just watching it. But I think we've finally come to the point. The Dallas Cowboys are the most expensive, overrated, underachieving franchise up to this point. Mike McCarthy's outdated. Mike Nolan is outdated. The offensive line has never been addressed, and neither has the secondary's been addressed. Just by looking at it from your point of view, do you feel like at this point, this is something now that Dallas really needs to tear down and they need to start back up from scratch? What's your opinion on that?
Yes and no. I feel like they have a lot of good pieces. Obviously, Amari Cooper I wouldn't say Amari Cooper is a, is the main piece. I feel more like CeeDee Lamb at this point is going to be their number one wide receiver. But obviously Amari Cooper is a good player. So I feel like they have a really good wide receiver core. I feel like they have a good quarterback in Dak Prescott. Obviously, with the injury that puts him down for a while, but I feel like he's going to come back, just as good, if not better than ever. So I feel like in that instance, yes, the defense has to be reconstructed at this point. It's atrocious. It's horrendous. They need to go out and definitely rebuild the defense. So I kind of feel like at this point, it's not necessarily a tear down, a blow up, and rebuild from scratch. But definitely it's more of a tear down certain parts and rebuild and build around. And a lot of it I think has to do with coaching. I was a little nervous, when McCarthy went over from Green Bay, because I mean, look what he had in Green Bay. You got Aaron Rodgers, who's a Super Bowl champion, Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer. So how you can't have success in Green Bay, I have no idea. But anyhow, so I was a little nervous when he went over. I think it's more of a coaching thing. And like you said, I totally agree with your first take on the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones, when it comes to being an owner, sure. When it comes to being a GM, I don't really feel like he's got, what it takes. I feel like he does need somebody to kind of put him in his place and kind of sit him down and be like, look, I'm the football guy. You're the money guy. You worry about the money. Let me worry about the football. I mean, look what they did to Dak Prescott. Yeah. They refused to pay him, so you got to give the man his due. Stop letting Jerry Jones, try to manage the football team and just have him, manage the owner part of it. And like you said, the teams that had success did that. So.
Yeah, and I feel like, and you're absolutely right. I mean, listen, there are some businesses that I have come across that, some of them, they kind of feel like they could be a little bit overbearing. And then, of course, this loyalty thing. But at the same time, when it comes to business, it's business decision type of moves, especially when it comes to the general manager, and not to mention when it comes to the coach. I mean, you hire the coach who makes the plays. He's the one that tries to control the game as much as he can from both the offense and defense. And when it comes to Jerry Jones, he's all about loyalty. He's all about that fun guy, and all of that. And so he kind of reminds me of Garrison Keller with a cocktail. Okay, you come up into one of those parties and there's Jerry, and he's a nice guy, but then, when it comes to his business and ownership, he's not really the kind of guy that really just manages his business well. But but my one thing is too, and one guy that I have highlighted, Michael Gallup. I mean, listen, CeeDee Lamb is going to be a really good wide receiver for years to come. There's no doubt about that. But then they also got that young kid as well, a part of their receiver squad. So their receivers are stacked. My thought is, if you could trade away Michael Gallup and get some picks, maybe get a defender, and I would say get a secondary, because that I think needs to be the importance. Because when you look around in the league, they're so offensive centric. They're all about the quarterback. They're all about the wide receiver. So do you feel like the Dallas could potentially pull that off if they decide to trade Michael Gallup and get some picks and maybe get a secondary? Do you think, what are some potential teams that could use a wide receiver? I said the Chicago Bears, I think, could be one team that could very much use a wide receiver because they need a number 2 next to Allen Robinson. What are your thoughts?
Oh, most definitely. I agree with that. I think the Bengals, with Joe Burrow, coming out hot from, from his championship with, in college. So I think they could definitely use a wide receiver. And, I was just reading, Mike Lee says in the chat, Cooper has no dog in him. And that's totally right. And I think that's, one of the big things about the Dallas Cowboys. You were talking about it when you were calling the game, Ezekiel Elliott fumbling the ball. Where's the edge? Where is the dog? Where is hey, let's get this done. Stop worrying about how many first downs you get and how much you're eating and all that kind of stuff, and just play the game of football. And I think that you see teams like the Raiders. You see teams that have brought in these young players, these guys that just love the game of football, and they got fight in them. There's a fight, and they're dogs, and they just want to win. Jonathan Abram is the guy just wants to play football, and he just wants to win. And I don't think you see that a lot. I think Dak Prescott has that. I think he's got that dog, but I think he really felt slighted. So there's definitely there definitely needs to be a change, and you kind of saw it with Green Bay when McCarthy was there. So I kind of feel like he might be part of the problem. You saw in Green Bay, where Aaron Rodgers was getting mad, and there was a few times where he was being interviewed, and he was like, "I'm sick and tired of this offensive line, not playing football. I'm sick and tired of them not taking this seriously. My career's on the line. What are you doing?" Not so many words, but he basically, that was the thing he had to say. He was mad.
Oh, yeah, he voiced it all out. And I mean, listen, it explains the reason why in the last 2 seasons he led the league in throwaways, because he didn't trust the plays. He didn't even trust what they were, what they were trying to do at this point.
Yeah, so make some trades, get some draft picks, get some young guys, draft some young guys who want to play this football, who feel like they got something to prove. Get them in here, get them working, and change the narrative, change the organization, change the culture. Tell Ezekiel Elliott, look, man, you're not too good for football, so you need to calm down. You need to stop worrying about yourself and just play this game.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And John Francis, a Raider J from My City, My Game here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Just about a few questions before we let you go. There's one that's mentioning about our thoughts on the New York Jets situation. I will say this. I've said this over and over again, week in and week out. Gase is closed. Why are we still holding on to Adam Gase with this whole offense? Listen, Sam Darnold, I believe, is a franchise quarterback. I think that there are some I think he's got stuff. This is why I'm not giving up on Sam Darnold at all at his position. But the problem of it is, this is a team that did not address their offensive lines as well. I understand they went and got Mekhi Becton. It's one piece. But the rest of it, you have hardly any offensive line. You hardly have any defensive players, because now Jamal Adams is in Seattle. And then you got CJ Mosley, who backed out of this season because of COVID reasons. But really, I just don't think that people really kind of fit themselves with the Jets. Now, my question to you is, if things don't really pan out this way, could the Jets see themselves potentially trading away Sam Darnold? And my thought is, I feel like Sam Darnold may be a Colt by next season. And if they do you think you probably would put the New York Jets in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, if you don't feel like Sam Darnold's the guy, then you need to go out and you need to find the guy. You need to find the guy that's going to lead this team, because every quarterback has to be a leader. Every quarterback has got to be, if he's not the captain, he's got to be the first mate. So he's got to be ready to be a coach on the field. He's got to be able to call the audibles. When he sees things on the field, he's got to be able to make those changes, and he's got to be a leader of men. And so if you don't feel like Sam Darnold is that guy, yeah, definitely go out for a guy like Trevor Lawrence. I don't feel like there's really anybody in the league that they would bring in to replace him. I don't feel like there's really anybody that's available. I don't know. You want to bring in Fitzmagic? He seemed to be playing pretty well with the Dolphins. I kind of feel bad for the guy. I feel like he kind of got the slight. Yeah. But anyhow, start young. If you're going to do a rebuild, bring in young guys. It's going to minimize your salary cap. And I think that's what the Jets have to do. And I agree with you, man. Gase is closed. A tiger doesn't change his stripes. Adam Gase is Adam Gase, and he's going to continue to be the same. A lot of people, I cover the Raiders pretty closely. A lot of people thought, John Gruden, he's conservative. He plays old school football. He's got an old school scheme. Yeah. He's afraid to go down the field. But that was before he had the threats. Now, some people say, well, he had Amari Cooper. We know about Amari Cooper already. We've talked about that. And now you see he's brought in these pieces. Him and Mike Mayock have brought in these pieces like Henry Ruggs III, Brian Edwards, even Nelson Aguilar right now is looking really, really good. Deep threats, guys that can stretch the field, and you can see they're starting to take shots downfield. John Gruden's always been that guy. Adam Gase, he's had the pieces. He's had what he needs to get the job done, and he hasn't got the job done because he is who he is. And that's never going to change. So you need to get rid of that guy, bring somebody in who's going to rebuild this team, bring in young guys, and work smart. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I mean, and I feel you with that, because think about it. Look who's having all of this success in Tennessee. The fact that, Ryan Tannehill is absolutely, a lot of people thought of it, he's an 8-8 guy. He probably will stick to a 9-17, but now they're undefeated and they got a great matchup against Pittsburgh here. And I can't wait to give my prime prediction on that. But, you kind of see the level of success of Tannehill. And at this point, this is without Adam Gase. He's with a strong head coach in Mike Vrabel. So, yeah, this kind of tells you a lot about just who Adam Gase really is, the type of, the coaching scheme that he brings to the table. And this is just one that the Jets, and I'll just say this, because I've even said I think the Giants are out of the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes, only because I think the Giants are slowly but surely getting a little better on their defensive play. But I do believe this is a team that still needs a few pieces in order to really kind of bring the best of them. Here's an interesting one. Our good friend Butcher Blocks and Patriots Talk. He's a diehard Patriot fan, Bobby. Our thoughts on a trade that the Patriots would trade Stephon Gilmore to the Cowboys for CeeDee Lamb. That could be very interesting, but the question is, would Jerry Jones really pull the trigger, though? I think that would be very interesting, because Stephon Gilmore is a top tier defender at the secondary position, and maybe that's kind of something that the Cowboys would need. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I can see that. I don't see them trading CeeDee Lamb, to be honest with you. I mean, unless Mike McCarthy is a complete idiot. I don't see them doing that, just because wide receivers, are such a high commodity, and CeeDee Lamb is such a high performing, high potential, high upside, low risk, because he's, this is his first year. He's a rookie. So I don't really see it happening. And exactly. Mike Lee, Gilmore's like 32 years old. So I don't see that happening. It's kind of like trading in a brand new car for an old Ferrari. Yeah, it's a Ferrari, but it's, I'd rather have the brand new car. And the brand new car happens to be a pretty nice car, a car that has a lot of potential. So I don't see that happening. I don't. Maybe if they were to put in some more draft picks.
I did think about that there, Bobby. I did think about that. Michael Gallup in the third. I think that's probably something that the Cowboys really should listen to on that. But it is a risk, because it's basically rolling the dice on a 32-year-old who's kind of on the tail end of his career. So it is kind of risky about bringing a guy in. But I feel like that if you have a veteran presence there, he might bring the best out of Trayvon Diggs. But even at the same time, maybe this could be the movement that the Cowboys need to really reshape their secondary.
Yeah, you bring him in, just bring him in for a smaller price. Don't pay the CeeDee Lamb price. That's what I would say. If you want to bring him in for veteran presence and all that kind of stuff, because that's really vital. Again, another player coach on the defense. Yeah, definitely, but not for the CeeDee Lamb price. I think that the Michael Gallup in the third is definitely a lot more reasonable.
What's going on? And of course, shout out to a really good special man here up in the chat. As you know, always got to show off the strong side. My pops here up in the chat. Please, guys, I appreciate and love your guys' support. Please give your thoughts and prayers for continuous strength and continuous work for my right side, strong side man, Mike Garcia here, my pops. back in April, suffered a stroke, but man, each and every single day is always a blessing when you work hard, you strengthen yourself up, and hopefully he'll get back to being 110%. I really do appreciate your guys' thoughts and prayers and just continuing just for the motivation and the push for him. He really would appreciate that. Thanks for jumping on here, Pop. I really do appreciate it, man. I love it when family just kind of comes in on the best times, man. Always. So John, where can they find you on all of your social media stuff?
Yeah, most definitely. So obviously, My City, My Game is the YouTube channel. All things Raiders, all things Trailblazers. But I also do a weekly reaction show to all of the games in the NFL. So that's on Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, I will be having that Raider J Reaction Tuesday, where I'm going to be going over all of the games, all of the scores, the stats, and just doing a live reaction. So I'm going to be looking at the stuff for the first time and instantly reacting, because I feel like that's, that gets you the best reaction, is when you haven't really seen what was going on. So I don't do a lot of studying before that. I just do it instantaneous, oh my God, or whatever the case may be. And so, yeah, so I do that there. You can search My City, My Game in YouTube. I believe they also put on the Spotlight Raiders network, or excuse me, Spotlight Sports Network YouTube channel. The link's down in the description. Or you can just search My City, My Game, click that little link in the search box and make sure you switch it to channel. And then also Raider_J77 on Twitter. My City, My Game on Facebook. I'm heavy on the social media, so if you hit me up on the social media, I definitely respond. If you got questions, ideas, that you'd like me to talk about on the show, anything like that, definitely let me know. I'll shout you out on the show, all that good stuff. So.
Absolutely. And John, love being able to work with you, especially a big key addition into this network. I'm really excited for what the future brings here to this network. So I really do appreciate you jumping on, my friend. And we got game 4 tonight. You really think the Dodgers might be able to put themselves in the cushion at 3-1?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, definitely time will tell. You guys can definitely catch the World Series here on the Spotlight Sports Network. I will be covering that at 5 p.m. Pacific and of course 7 p.m. Eastern time. So you guys can definitely check that out. So John, definitely awesome to have you here up on the show. Take care of yourselves. Best of luck to those Raiders tomorrow, and better hope things come out smoothly, my friend.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, man.
Absolutely. Hour 2 here on the Snake Sports Talk Show coming up next. You don't want to miss it.
What's up, fantasy champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now, with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, hour 2, we are live here in Vegas. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show. We're live on the Spotlight Sports Network, wherever and however you may be watching. We are on Facebook Live, and we're also on Twitch. We're on YouTube, and we're also on the Periscope on Twitter. And man, we are having a great show here today. We had a lot to talk about, and kudos to John Francis, aka Raider J of My City, My Game, being on here earlier. Lots of good stuff. Lots of really good stuff talking about those Raiders and talking about the Portland Trailblazers and just all around the league. So just before, because we know during the top of the hour, we've got my prime predictions, and the newest thing that I'm going to be introducing as well is I'm going to be introducing the Thrive fantasies forecast of some players to look forward to. So it'll be interesting. So let's talk about this. So last night's game between the Tampa Bay Rays and the LA Dodgers. I mean, listen, Walker Buehler pitched an absolute gem last night. 10 strikeouts in 5 innings of frame. He was absolutely on fire. And I thought that the pitching matchup between him and Charlie Morton was going to be very interesting. But at the end of the day, it was very lopsided. The Dodgers just got a hold of Charlie Morton very early. Justin Turner's solo home run. Then you got Max Muncy and Austin Barnes, who came up, had a really good game at the tail end of the lineup. So this is going to be interesting all throughout the rest of this World Series. Now, I think, and I'll check to see exactly who the starters were, but I did see that Julio Urias was going to be the starter for the Dodgers in Game 4 tonight. And you don't want to end up missing that. That'll be at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific, at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the guy that's going to be starting for the Tampa Bay Rays is Yarbrough. Ryan Yarbrough is going to be starting for the Tampa Bay Rays. It's going to be interesting now to be seeing a lot of relievers now getting the starts for Tampa. But I still think this is going to be an interesting series to go all the way the distance to 7. It's a 2-1 Dodger lead. Urias, who's 4-0 with a .56 ERA during postseason, and Yarbrough 1-0, 3.38 during the postseason. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think it's going to be very, very interesting. We're going to have, we got a lot of exciting games. We got exciting baseball along the way. We've got college that's going on, and we've also got NFLs, which now brings me to my favorite segment of all. It's Jake's Prime Predictions in Week 7, and I better hope that we get things chugging along and get ourselves up on a winning streak. So let's sound it off. Here we go. So I've been very skeptical about this Atlanta Falcons team all year long. No Dan Quinn. They definitely pull out a lot of offense, but their defense sure as hell could not close out games. But however, I understand on the other side, there's somewhat of a defense. It's not great, but it is definitely an interesting take. I'm taking the Detroit Lions plus 2.5 here in this game. Listen, we know that they beat a terrible team, in a rebuild team in Jacksonville. That's one different casing. But however, the defense, of course, seems to be getting a little solid on the rush game. Now, in the rushing yards allowed, they've only allowed 145 yards, where versus on the other side, they've only allowed 97. But I feel like that is going to change after the performance that Adrian Peterson and DeAndre Swift both put up last week against Jacksonville. It's going to be very interesting. And Matty Ice, and this team, this Atlanta Falcons defense has been giving up a lot of passing yards. So what is that going to mean? That's going to mean that Matthew Stafford might have an interesting game. He's going to be throwing it out. You got Kenny Golladay, you got TJ Hawkinson, and you got a lot of real good wide receivers there. So expect Matthew Stafford to really kind of come up at his best against that pass defense. So this is going to be my final score. It's going to be a close one to swallow the 2.5 points. I'm taking the Detroit Lions 23-20 over Atlanta, upsetting them on the road in Mercedes-Benz. So I know it's not really too much of an attractive game, only because we all know about Baker Mayfield's his limitations and such, and then him recently getting benched for Case Keenum. Now, this is what's going to be interesting. So I am taking the Cleveland Browns here at the minus 3 here up in this game. Cincinnati's a really good rebuilding young team. Now, remember, the last time these teams met, Joe Burrow threw for 3 touchdowns and no picks. He seemed like he was in the driver's seat as the top best quarterback prospect who came out of the draft, and he looked his absolute best up here in this game. Now, here's what's going to be the hard part for Cincinnati and Joe Mixon. This team had allowed 94 rushing yards on the ground. And this is going to be something that is going to be a tough challenge for the Cincinnati Bengals moving forward here up in this game. But this team has really been limited to both their passing and their rushing. Now, they are without Austin Hooper, their tight end. I think it's going to be a little bit challenging because now they have to rely on their wide receiver core. But I feel like with Kevin Stefanski, who puts in trust in guy like Case Keenum, I think it's going to be a close enough matchup between the two of them. I'm going with a 27-23. Cleveland wins on the road in Cincinnati. Now, I would not be surprised if Joe Burrow has himself a great game against Cleveland like he did in the last matchup they had together. Now, this is going to definitely be the game of the week. The Steelers and the Titans. This is going to be super interesting, but I feel like this is leaning me towards the underdog Pittsburgh Steelers. This is one that's going to be interesting for sure. Listen, Tennessee is without Taylor Lewin. That's going to be difficult on an offensive line who knows how to protect a guy like Ryan Tannehill, and they've been red hot. But this Pittsburgh Steelers defense with guys like TJ Watt and so many others on that defensive front seven, they've been putting a lot of pressure on the defenses. And by the way, a Big Ben, I haven't spoke so much about him, but this year, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception, and he's already got at least 1,100 passing yards. This is an interesting Big Ben that we're seeing in 2020 than we have seen in the last couple of seasons. And so I think this has been a big-time turnaround. But by the way, a wide receiver who I think has been very impactful with this core, it's not Juju Smith-Schuster, but it's definitely Chase Claypool, the rookie. I think he's put up a lot of really good numbers and has really helped out this Pittsburgh's offense. But this is what's going to be difficult. The Pittsburgh Steelers defensive front seven, they've only allowed 66 yards on the ground. And Tennessee has relied on Derrick Henry all throughout the run game. This is going to be a difficult matchup. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, but I think Pittsburgh's going to pull this off. Plus 1.5. That's all I'm going to need. That's all I'm going to need in order for them to really kind of keep this game close. So I'm going to end up going with a 28-26. Tennessee loses this game by the +2, but I give Pittsburgh here on this one with the edge, and Pittsburgh goes undefeated still at 6-0. All right, so the New Orleans Saints at home against the Carolina Panthers, and this Panthers defense has really been struggling in the last couple of games that they have played out. So I'm taking the home favorite New Orleans Saints here at the -7.5. This has been an offense, and by the way, Drew Brees, he's been making his completions. He's been throwing at least to his receivers, and his quarterback rating has been rising up slightly. So he really has been working his offense. Now, it may not seem that way, but hopefully that Michael Thomas is out here in this game. So you're going to expect a lot of guys to really start to step up on their offense, especially Emmanuel Sanders and many others here, and Alvin Kamara having a really good game as well on the run. So, and Carolina in these last couple of games, they have allowed a lot of passing yards, 223 passing yards allowed. And this is a team that likes to pass, and they also like to run. I think New Orleans comfortably in a game at home, even without any fans. This is going to be a lot of fun. This is going to be interesting. So I will take New Orleans winning this game at home 28-20. Carolina, it's going to be a difficult game, but I do think New Orleans is going to pull this off against that defense. All right, so I think this is just a game that's an absolute no-brainer. I'm going with the Buffalo Bills here in this one. Listen, Adam Gase really needs to show himself the door. Somebody's got to show himself out the door. I mean, this has been atrocious of the Jets so far throughout the season. But the good news of it is Sam Darnold is coming back to playing in this game against Buffalo. But Buffalo so far, I mean, they have been hit up with a bunch of big time losses. I mean, they lost to Kansas City in that game, and then not to mention they lost the game before. So Buffalo is going to want to get themselves on a winning streak here in this one, and better yet, to kind of start yourselves up with a big game against the Jets. So this is what I am going with. In this score, I'm going with 30-17. Buffalo wins it out and just blows past the Jets here. So after the Cowboys' performance on Monday night, this has kind of been a little bit of an interesting game for me. So I'm going on the other side of things, and I'm going with the Washington football team. The first time you'll ever hear me say going with a Washington team. Listen, Ron Rivera, I know he's been making a lot of moves that have been questionable, not to mention benching Dwayne Haskins and putting in Kyle Allen. However, Dallas is in the same boat. They're without Dak, and they've got Andy Dalton, who played a lot like beige water pistol in Monday night, and it was embarrassing. But this has been a team that during the runs, they've shortened themselves up by 40 yards less. At 130, they've allowed. But however, the defense for the Cowboys have been allowing a lot of passes. So I'm going to expect that Kyle Allen is going to do his job, and he's going to end up distributing the football to big-time receivers like Terry McLaurin, and really kind of push through this defensive secondaries. I think it is a doable game. I really do think it's a doable game. I would not have gone this route unless I had seen something out of Dallas. But after Monday Night Football's game and that embarrassment of a loss against Arizona, they look shaken up. I'm going to take the Washington football team to win 24-23. 1 point is all I need to swallow on the underdog. So the Packers really got themselves a little bit of a break with having the Houston Texans on the road. I'm taking the Green Bay Packers here to win this on the road. Aaron Rodgers, and we know that, he's been having a great year at 13 touchdowns, 2 picks, and 1,300 yards. But this has also been a really good rebounding game for the Green Bay Packers, only because of the fact of that embarrassing loss to Tampa Bay last week, where Todd Bowles was outplaying that whole offense and pushing Aaron Rodgers around. So I think after a dud game like that, they're going to come back and rebound themselves. I mean, Houston's defense is not looking great. They've been looking absolutely atrocious. And despite what you may say about Deshaun Watson being a really good quarterback at his position, there's just not a whole lot of offensive support, not to mention defensive support for this Houston team. I'm going to take Green Bay to win this game. -3.5 is all I need. 33-21. Green Bay is going to steamroll Houston on the road. So I know a lot of people, and I know some of my colleagues are probably going to be very skeptical of the pick I'm going with. But of course, it's the Buccaneers and the Raiders. I'm going with the Tampa Bay Bucks here in this game. Now, here's the hard part. This is what I think is going to be difficult. We saw the display that Todd Bowles had at his defensive position at his core and his coordinating best. He pushed around Aaron Rodgers left and right. But here's the other thing you have to look at too. The Raiders are without their top tier offensive linemen. That's Trent Brown, that's Richie Incognito, and that's a lot of guys that are there on the front line. That's going to be difficult for the Raiders, especially with that front seven with Ndamukong Suh, and a bunch of others. And this is where, and not to mention too, Devin White and Shaq Barrett, they are really good Mike linebackers. This is where the Raiders have to be strong on that front line. But I think this is going to be a difficult scenario for the Raiders to go through because of the fact of that COVID list of their offensive linemen. Now, if they were healthy, this is the thing. If they were healthy, it would have been a completely different story. But also, too, you have to think about just the offenses. I'm not going to get into this Antonio Brown thing. He's not ready yet. But I do think that Mike Evans, and not to mention Chris Godwin, will definitely be the catalyst here in this game. So I'm taking the Tampa Bay Bucks at the -4.5. I do not think it's going to be lopsided of a game. I think it's going to be close. 4.5 is all I need. 28-23. I think Tampa Bay is going to come into Vegas. They're going to give Derek Carr a lot of problems, but I think this is where it's going to go. 28-23. Tampa takes out the Raiders here on the road. So the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Denver Broncos, and the Broncos, of course, who's got Drew Lock back. But despite having that happen, I'm going with the Kansas City Chiefs on the road. Now, I know that they are without Sammy Watkins, Alex Okafor, and Mitchell Schwartz. That's going to be very difficult for the Kansas City Chiefs in some specific areas, but it doesn't seem like it slows them down as much. Now, Denver's front seven has definitely shut down the run game at 110 yards they've allowed. So you're going to expect Patrick Mahomes not just to run around, but to really be sharp in the pass game. Open up, throw to his receivers, and really march the Kansas City Chiefs downfield. So this is going to be pretty interesting to watch all throughout this game. But I am taking Kansas City on the road in Denver and Mile High. I'm going with a score of 33-23. Chiefs win it in Mile High. So here's an interesting game. Bill Belichick facing off against his former young quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. This is going to be very, very interesting. But I am going with the New England Patriots here to beat the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the Niners, of course, are without Jimmy Ward, Quan Alexander, and another one of their safeties. This is what's going to be an issue for them on their defensive secondaries. And remember, New England has been very key when it comes to small, short passing games. And this is what's been kind of the topic for them. Now, New England, we know that with Cam Newton, he had a rough game against Denver. Now, remember, he was coming back from a COVID list. Now, I think after that week, it pissed him off, needed him to work harder. And I think he's definitely going to bounce back. I'm taking New England and a close score, 27-24, -2.5 is all I need. And New England, I think, is going to push out this game here at home in Foxborough. So despite what you all may think about Arizona's performance against those Dallas Cowboys in an atrocious Monday night, I am still going with the Seattle Seahawks here in this game. Now, the only unfortunate part for the Seahawks in their backfield is they're without Jamal Adams at safety. But however, Russell Wilson is continuously cooking for the Seahawks, still at 5-0. Now, this Arizona team is nice, okay? It's a really, really good piece. I'm not denying it. The offense completely steamrolled. They completely steamrolled the Dallas Cowboys on Monday night. And Seattle, regardless of what you may think, their offense still is continuously being steady. And so Russell Wilson, I think, is going to have a heck of a game against that Arizona defense. It will, in fact, be pretty interesting. 3.5 is the bet line. So I'm going with a 27-21. Seattle wins on the road in Arizona. I think this is going to be a really good game indeed. And Russ is going to continuously cook. All right, so here's an interesting Monday night game that I think is going to be pretty crazy, but I'm not going with the favorite here in this one. I'm actually going with the underdog Chicago Bears. I do not know why. I don't know what it is, but for whatever reason, there's just a feeling to me that I feel like this Chicago Bears team, from amongst their secondaries and not to mention their defensive front line, I think it's going to put up a heck of a matchup against the Rams. Listen, I know the offense has been kind of here and there with the Rams. They've also been trying to stay consistent, but I feel like this is kind of something that the Rams might end up giving up here in this game. Now, I know it's not attractive with the Chicago Bears offense with Nick Foles, regardless of it, but Chicago has been getting some jobs done, whether it's offense or whether it's defense. I don't know how they're doing it. I do not know what Matt Nagy has in his pocket when it comes to some of these wins, but I feel like this is one you cannot shun this out. You really cannot turn your heads away in a game like this. I'm taking Chicago. +6 is the point line. It is a risk. And I'm going with a 27-21 Bears win against the Rams on the road. It's a risk, but it is a risk worth taking. So there, of course, was my prime predictions here of this week. And so also coming in from our good folks at Thrive Fantasy, let me go ahead and crap. Hold on a second. Just got to sign myself in real quick. And then, of course, I will give you the Thrive Fantasy forecast as well. I really am excited for what this forecast really is going to bring. So let's see. So here we go. We've got some NFL matchups here and a guaranteed pool of $15,000 that you guys can end up winning here in week 6. It's a $25 payout. So here are the forecasts. So the forecast here today, Drew Brees, the prediction, 280 passing yards. And my gut feeling is saying that I think Drew Brees, because of the completions, take the under on those passing yards. I don't think it's going to be a complete aerial game because he is without Emmanuel Sanders and he is without Michael Thomas. And I think it's going to be very interesting, but I think he's going to be under that. I'd say probably about 250, maybe 260 passing yards. Aaron Jones, 75 yards rushing. Will he go over or will he go under on this one? I think he's going to end up going on the over side. I think he's going to have 100-yard rushing on the ground, especially with how this defensive front seven of Houston has been. So I'm going on that route. But 75.5 is the forecast there. Will Fuller, 72.5 receiving yards. I'm going to end up taking the under. I think he's going to end up going with 60 in that one. He's just going to come up short against that Green Bay secondary. So I don't think, I think this is, this is an offense that's really going to cause a lot of problems. So that defense, I think, is going to shut them down. Kenny Golladay, 4.5 receptions against an Atlanta defense like that. Take the over. That is one that I think he's going to end up getting 7 receptions, maybe 8, especially with that pass game against Atlanta. It's going to be a lot of fun. But they've got a lot of different completions, got a lot of different touchdown sets. But here we go. Matt Ryan, completion percentage 25.5. I'm going to say take the slight over on this one. I think it's going to be about 27 he's going to complete here up in this game. That's the forecast from there. And passing touchdowns against the Jets for Josh Allen, it's 2.5. Take the over. I think he's going to end up having 4 touchdown passing game. I think it's going to be great, but that there is the forecast. That forecast is provided by Thrive Fantasy. If you go online or download the app today, use promo code SS Network and match up your first time playing up to $50 on some of the pool plays, whether it's roto or head-to-head matchups, whatever the case may be. Like we said, there's a pool going on that you could be winning up to $15,000 in that pool play if you play in NFL Week 7's pool play. So definitely check it out at thrivefantasy.com. Promo code SS Network, short for Spotlight Sports Network. Get your match of $50 and start playing today.
What's up, Fantasy Champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now, with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
And welcome back, everybody, here to the Snake Sports Talk Show. Appreciate you all jumping on in and jumping in live up on the chats as well. Man, I am hoping I'm getting a rebound off my prime predictions this week. I'm really excited about this. I'm really excited about this because I just think that these matchups really do kind of, put up a lot of different push. I think it's going to be fun. And again, people may think I'm crazy for going with the Chicago Bears against the LA Rams. I don't feel that crazy about it. I really don't. I think it is I think it's a risk worth taking because I just think that that's going to be really such an interesting game. And of course, too, I totally forgot about the Chargers and the Jaguars. Oh, man. But I'm definitely going with the Chargers here in this one. Justin Herbert. Listen, this better be Justin Herbert's first win. This better be his win. I just think that, with this team, with Anthony Lynn, this is what I'm going to end up talking about from here. And in the last couple of games, because the Chargers, if you look at the schedule and you look at the results, how close that they are by one touchdown margins, if not less than that. Don't you think that those games could have been wins? I mean, listen, I thought that this could have been a win against New Orleans. It should have been. It should have been a win against Tampa Bay. And it should have been a win, potentially, if it could have gone either or, the win against Kansas City. And this team should have been 4-1. And I'm going on a complete limb about that because this is just one that I look at the offense and I look at the defense and just how everything is set. And Justin Herbert is playing his tail off for a rookie with no preseason. Okay, barely any OTAs. Along with Joe Burrow, they've become the most impactful. They become the most impactful cores in the NFL at their position. And now we're getting a chance to see Tua Tagovailoa start up. And I think that's going to be an interesting matchup for sure for the Dolphins. Because with the success that Joe Burrow is having, and same with Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, I think, is going to be very interesting. I know it broke Ryan Fitzpatrick's heart with the fact that he got sat and now the future is now here for Miami. He's both excited and he's also both disappointed at the same time. But I truly think that, with the way that things are shaping, I'm hoping the Chargers get the win against the Jaguars because at this point, if they lose embarrassingly to the Jags, then I'm putting Anthony Lynn and Gus Bradley on the hot seat because this is ridiculous. The fact that they're playing conservative football. Listen, Justin Herbert came from a conservative offense in Oregon. Okay, you had an offensive line coach who was the head coach, and he played conservative football. But by the time they got into the Rose Bowl against Wisconsin, Justin Herbert's last year, ball out, kid, ball out. And sure enough, he did. Oregon wins the Rose Bowl. If you do the same thing with Justin Herbert and let him play his game, listen, Pete Carroll's letting Russ cook. Okay, not any issues, not any problems going on that end. And Seahawks are 5-0. But this defense, the way that it's being shaped and the way that it is being played is just not great. I understand that they are losing guys like Derwin James for the year. Chris Harris should be back soon. But this has just been so questionable about the Chargers. But this has been a time where And he's playing insanely well. And they cannot be losing because of just, the quarterback's play. Okay, Justin Herbert in that game against New Orleans, which should have never went the way it did, 4 touchdowns, no picks. And you still lost the game. That should have automatically rose eyebrows. And by the way, there's one free agent that's out there. And he's an offensive lineman, just got released by the Buffalo Bills. It's Quentin Spain. And this offensive line they've been hit. They've been hit with a bunch of injuries. Brian Balaga's supposed to be back, but Trey Turner, I haven't seen him all season long. So this guy, Quentin Spain, last year with Buffalo, he only allowed one sack to Josh Allen. That's it. He's a solid offensive lineman. I think that if he comes into a core like the Chargers, but the question is, are the Chargers really willing to pay? Because that has been the biggest struggle of this franchise. The fact that they are so conservative of their offense, but they're so conservative of their financials as well. They don't pay out important guys, at least in the important positions. And that's what's really taken a toll. Listen, Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes, players made the choice to join Kansas City. And then, of course, some of it, the general manager, he made it happen. He made it happen with some players to fill in those important positions. But it is going to be difficult with the amount of payouts. But this is one that I'd love to see a matchup for years between Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes for the next 10 years. But with the way that things are shaping, we know that Joe Burrow is in a rebuilding and reshaping young Cincinnati Bengals offense. But I do think that there are some potentials in their game. The Chargers, for one, they really need to start focusing in on their important issues and fix them up as quickly as possible because, again, you re-signed Joey Bosa and Keenan Allen for a reason. And there's a vision behind that. That's why having this kid, Justin Herbert, and you're not going to put in Tyrod Taylor, I knew this was going to happen. And I said this at the beginning of the season. This is Justin Herbert's team. It's not meant for Tyrod Taylor. It's unfortunate of the injury he went down, but it is impossible to turn away talent like that. And so I think that also with Tua Tagovailoa in Miami, you got to be excited if you're South Beach right now. You got to be excited about South Beach because the fact that Tua is coming out, he's a young kid that possesses a lot of really good stuff. And the offense around him with Devontae Parker, Jordan Howard, Matt Breida, and a lot of guys, this is going to be very interesting. And so we'll see. We'll see. But this era of quarterbacks is changing so fast. And I'm really loving the cores. I'm really loving these quarterbacks because come next year, when you have Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, and Sam Ehlinger, which other teams are really going to need quarterbacks? Which other teams are really going to need quarterbacks? So I think it's going to be very, very interesting from here. So time now for the hot press. So, of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Antonio Brown, who basically missed out an extended amount of time due to suspensions, and then not to mention a short amount of retirement, they have come to a mutual agreement to a 1-year deal. Antonio Brown has to pass COVID-19 protocols before he can even join the team. So, so Tom Brady, once again, on the move with certain things here that he wants to change up for this team. And so Antonio Brown is going to be joining this Tampa Bay Bucs team, and Brown, who had been a longtime Pittsburgh Steeler, ends up moving to the Raiders and then moving to the Patriots, and then eventually, because of his off-field antics, really kind of it really kind of messed it up for his career. But this is going to be interesting. I'm not saying this is going to be a very, very impactful play right away. But I just think it's going to be interesting to see how all of this pans out. Now, I know they've got offensive guys like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but I think this is going to be very interesting on how on how this is going to really shape up for the Tampa Bay Bucks. But this defense with Todd Bowles is really rebuilding and refreshing, and man, it is looking really good. But we'll see what the rest of the season really brings out. But if Antonio Brown turns things around, and we can only hope for stuff like this, then who knows? But if it still continues to be the same antics, I would not be surprised. So Graham Mertz, quarterback of Wisconsin, he ended up rewriting Wisconsin football's record books as a debut as a starter. So Graham Mertz on Friday night ended up completing 20 of 21 passes for over 248 yards and 5 touchdowns with the Badgers' big-time blowout win against Illinois, 45-7. He's a redshirt freshman that got moved up to the starting role after Jack Cohen suffered a non-contact injury in his foot. So this is what's going to be pretty interesting to see this kid. But he tied the program for 5 passing touchdowns, the most in a game since Jim Sorgi and Daryl Bavell in '93 and in 2003. This is going to be an interesting kid. I think he's going to be a very interesting kid to watch. Now I'm not sure as far as the impact he may have, but we know that Illinois, Illinois is such an interesting program. There's not really so much to talk about with them. But of course, this is what Mertz said afterward. He said, "It was definitely fun. I owe it to Coach Boudmeyer and Coach Christ. We took a ton of time, one-on-one meetings, and really just sorted the game plan out, and we knew what we were doing, and I felt confident in my ability to go execute, and I think there's definitely some stuff we need to clean up, a lot more stuff we can clean up." So it kind of seems like this is a kid that's got a lot of potential in him as a redshirt freshman. So I think Wisconsin's going to be very interesting on it. Now, remember, Wisconsin didn't have too much of an impactful quarterback since Russell Wilson. I'll be honest. But I think this is going to be very interesting to watch. But we'll see what the next couple of years brings out for this kid. The Dodgers, of course, in the last game, in Game 3 of the 2020 World Series, Walker Buehler with a big time stellar performance with 10 Ks in 6 innings pitched. He definitely made every bit of his start very, very dominant, and not to mention, it really helped out with the bullpen for the Dodgers to win 6-2. The 26-year-old, he had 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, and 10 strikeouts in his performance. And this is what Buehler had to say about the performance. "I think the more you do these things, the calmer you get. I don't want to keep harping on it, but I enjoy doing this, and I feel good in these spots." So the last young pitcher who to pitch a game like that, striking out 10 in a World Series, was back in 2003 with Josh Beckett of the Florida Marlins at that time, who had 10 strikeouts in his young career. And that's what led the Marlins to a World Series championship against the New York Yankees in 2003. So I think that right now the Dodgers are in a good cushion. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how this all matches up well. But I think the Dodgers in Game 4, we'll see what that matchup really puts up, because now you got Julio Urias and you got Ryan Yarbrough who's playing really well. So, also finally, we got some UFC matchups here tonight. We've got Khabib against what is it? Man, I can't even pronounce his last name. But so I think this is going to be a really, really good fight. I think Khabib, because of just his type of drive, and I think most of all just his way of approaching this fight. 5'10", they're both weighing about the same at 155, both of them with the same similar reach. I think this is going to be close. I think this is going to be a close fighting card. I like it. But I do think Khabib is going to get the edge of the fight. I'm going to go all 5 rounds. And I think at the end of it, I think this may be a split decision. And I think Khabib is going to get the nod and still stay undefeated at 29-0, and just continuing to showcase his dominance in that lightweight division. So some UFC action tonight here at the Flash Forum in Abu Dhabi. As it's UFC 254. Definitely check it out for sure. So that's going to do it for the Hot Press. So coming up here up on the bottom of the hour, there's kind of something fun here that I wanted to end up kind of just sharing with everybody here. But I think that, throughout this whole year and some of the most memorable moments, I think this is going to be very interesting. I think because to me, I'm just ready for 2020 to be over and ready to start 2021. But instead of thinking about all of what we had to go through 2020, I'm going to be looking at some of the best moments that we had of 2020, and I will share that off in my top 10 best moments here. You guys don't want to end up missing that here on the Snake Sports Talk Show.
What's up, fantasy champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
All righty, ladies and gentlemen. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank all of you guys for joining in with me here on the show. What a great Saturday morning we put together here. I told you I was definitely stacked here this week, and I'm really confident in my prime prediction picks. Not to mention, we had a really good interview with John Francis of My City, My Game, Raider J. It's been really, really good, and I cannot wait for at least what tomorrow is going to bring up with some of these matchups. It's going to be a lot of fun. UFC 254 tonight. I'm going with Khabib all the way in 5 rounds, and I do believe it's going to be a split decision, and Khabib's going to get the nod, and he's going to remain undefeated here. And we've also got some college football action, and we've got World Series. Man, I'm excited for it. And definitely catch me on the Spotlight Sports Network tonight for Game 4 of the 2020 World Series between the Tampa Bay Rays and the Los Angeles Dodgers. That will be at 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You guys don't want to end up missing that. We'll have that all set up there for you, and you can catch more of me here upon the game as well. So just to wrap up the show here in the remaining couple of minutes we've got, my best for last. I know a lot of us are really kind of looking back at this year, and we've really kind of looked at just how sports has really kind of has really kind of come about. We know that we had the start of the season, we had the shutdown and the stoppage of the season, and now we're kind of getting up to the point where we're kind of close to finishing up seasons because baseball's in the last tail end of their season before they can call it a year. But it really has been tough amounts of challenges. So for me, my top 10 best for lasts, I think are going to be some interesting moments that we've witnessed in 2020 this year. And so here we go here at number 10. So for me, number 10, I feel like that the most interesting moment of 2020 was, in fact, I think it was the Clippers signing Kawhi Leonard. And I think that this is kind of interesting because the Clippers are known as a franchise that has had a lot of losing seasons. They've come up short in the playoffs several times, and they haven't really looked like the type of team that is a championship caliber team. Now, I thought this was going to be the rewritten script for them because of just the amounts of depth they had. But now it kind of seems like this year has really kind of looked very interesting. And I just really think that the Clippers, they're not that far away. Like, let's not kind of get our minds derailed on it. They're not that far away. But I think they needed to address a lot of things because by the time they were in the bubble, Lou Williams, the whole wings thing, just kind of told you about how these players really kind of felt throughout the season. So now Ty Lue, no Doc Rivers this year, as he moves on to Philadelphia. But Ty Lue really needs to reshape this team, hoping that they can get themselves in the driver's seat to really be competitive by this next year. So, number 9, to me, I think this was kind of interesting, but the start of the season, the Mookie Betts deal, I thought that was humongous because first thing of it is Boston, this is yet again that they're going through this type of history in their franchise. Because remember, 2 notable names that were big-time potentials with Boston, then they get traded away to different places. Years ago, Babe Ruth. Okay, Babe Ruth was a young pitcher and was a big-time hitter for Boston at the time. Boston let him go. And then he goes and takes that contract with the Yankees, and then he turns into being the one person that built the house for the Yankees in 1923. And that I thought was probably one of the biggest losses for the Red Sox's franchises. And then number 2, definitely Roger Clemens. Roger Clemens had a lot of heat in his pitches with that fastball. And say what you will, whether he took steroids or he didn't. A guy that I thought was very impactful at his position at pitching, and that's another guy that the Red Sox got rid of. And at that point goes to the Yankees. He goes to a bunch of different places. And I thought he was very, very interesting and very fun to watch when it came to pitching. This is kind of the same scenario that they went with Mookie Betts because of the fact of, they were kind of stuck with the financials. But I was very surprised that they even let a guy like Mookie Betts walk because they know they were going to have to pay him. They knew they were going to have to do that to him. But then the second he moves to LA, along with David Price, LA got their lock. I think he is a big-time 5-tool star. He possesses speed. He possesses defense. He possesses a bat. And that is going to be something that the Red Sox are not going to get much sleep of for the next couple of years. This is one that really, really hurt them of their franchise. And now they're looking back at it again after the last 2 times of their franchise. Man, another memorable moment. Definitely the Los Angeles Lakers winning the NBA Finals. That was one that I thought was a big-time memory for 2020 because, listen, the Lakers were fresh off of a loss last year. With the first year that LeBron had even came up, he had a young core group. They initially refreshed it. They brought in Anthony Davis. They brought in a lot of role players like Rajon Rondo, Dwight Howard, and JaVale McGee. And these guys kind of seemed like, they were tough and gritty. And so, because think of it this way, the Lakers' history over the years, with Kobe and Shaq, Magic and Kareem, this was a type of team that had a different feel when it came to the chemistry on their bench as well. And they all won championships because of it. The Lakers had James Worthy when it came to Magic and Kareem. James Worthy was a big-time player out of their bench. In the Shaq and Kobe days, you had Rick Fox, you had Robert Horry, Derek Fisher. And then even up to this year with LeBron and Anthony Davis, you had Alex Caruso, Rajon Rondo, Dwight Howard, and JaVale McGee. There were a bunch of guys on this roster that I thought was very interesting, but they made a huge impact for this championship team for the Lakers. And by the way, they had gotten a ton of breaks from a lot of this. I think the pandemic gave them a break because they put themselves in a bubble situation. And it was a much needed break for some of these older veterans. They needed a chance to kind of rest up, get their energy back. And then sure enough, they took it over. They took it over and won an NBA championship. And especially in a year where, Kobe Bryant and Gigi Bryant's passing really kind of tore up the city. And I think that this was probably one of the greatest moments we've had in sports in 2020. The Tampa Bay Lightning winning the Stanley Cup final. This was a team that was stacked up with so many players. I just truly think that, because Tampa, they needed to do it. They needed to win a championship. This is a team with Nikita Kucherov, Steven Stamkos, Ryan McDonough, Victor Hedman, Blake Coleman. They had a lot of really good guys. And then you also have Andrei Vasilevsky behind the net. Last year, they were embarrassed massively on by the Columbus Blue Jackets in the first round. And this was a team that was the presidential they were the Presidential Trophy Award winners, and all of a sudden, they just fell off the face of this earth and got shut out. And that was a bad taste in their mouth. The year prior, they had made it to the Eastern Conference Final just to get to Game 7 and was cut short by the Washington Capitals, who they were on a mission to winning their first ever Stanley Cup in their franchise, and especially the first in in Alex Ovechkin's career. And this was a team that truly stacked themselves up. They were pissed. And this was a year that they needed to come out at their full best. They defeated a lot of big time teams. I mean, they took out a bunch of them and some real good competitive teams as well. And by the time they faced off against Dallas, who Dallas was very tough on defense, Tampa Bay needed that win. Tampa Bay needed that championship. And that was one they finally got it done. Job is finally over. And we'll see what next year's shape's like. I mean, let's see, because yes, they are by far still the best team in the league. But there are some up and coming teams that are also on missions themselves, but it will be interesting. The big time moment in sports, at least in 2020, I thought what was interesting about this was, oh boy. I think the biggest moment was, I just think, to me right now, the World Series in baseball has been, I'll be honest with you, I think the ratings have gone up massively. They're finally doing what they should. Let the kids play for once. You look at some of these guys. Now, listen, I think the pitching, like when it comes to the umpiring, I just truly feel like that, the umpire strike zone and everything else in the World Series right now has been off. It's been everywhere. But either way, we've seen some really good pitching. We've seen some really good hitting. We've seen a lot of really good grinding moments from both teams in baseball in the playoffs. And I thought this was pretty exciting. I like the setup of just the playoff format. But I'm hoping once everything is cleared up, because this bubble structure is just really interesting to me. But I think once everything starts to clear up, we'll start to get, I love this format of how they do this. I do not agree that they should implement runners at second base in extra innings. I don't, because in playoffs, it's playoffs for a reason. Don't make it easy, because these are one of the pressurous situations. This is what separates the boys from the men. So I love this playoff format. But I do think once all of the coasts is clear at this point, hopefully we'll get back to our travels. We'll get back to being in our home ballparks, and being in front of the limited amount of fans before, all of this is all cleared up and we have some type of normalcy along the way. So, but I've really liked how this has turned out. I think this is a big upside. I think this has been a big upside for baseball and what they needed. Let the kids play. Stop making it super strict. We're not here to change tradition. We're only making tradition better for the game. That's what it's all meant to be. So I think those were some big time moments there. And then I know someone mentioned in the chat the Chiefs Super Bowl was the worst memory of 2020. I mean, yes, yeah, because it was the Chiefs, but I'm not going to say only because of Patrick Mahomes, but that was definitely a moment in 2020 as well. And I think that it was very, very interesting. But hey, Andy Reid finally got his championship, and the Chiefs now finally are Super Bowl champions. But we'll see now what this season brings up, because there's supposed to be an implemented bubble. But we'll see. So definitely like and follow on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where you can catch me in all future shows. Subscribe and hit the bell button for the latest episodes in the near future of the Snake Sports Talk Show and on the Spotlight Sports Network on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify for all of our podcast episodes as well that we put on and record. Also, check out all of our merchandises and all of our articles under the SpotlightSportsNetwork.com. And as we mentioned before we end up going, here's a little something from Thrive Fantasy.
What's up, Fantasy Champions? Spotlight Sports Network is excited to tell you about an amazing deal from Thrive Fantasy, your place for daily fantasy sports and esports. Right now, with promo code SS Network, Thrive Fantasy will match up to $50 of your first deposit. So go to thrivefantasy.com and sign up now with promo code SS Network. That's thrivefantasy.com, promo code SS Network.
All righty, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to conclude it for me here on the show. This is Jake the Snake signing off. Have a great Saturday morning and have a great weekend. Enjoy the games here tomorrow. Enjoy the UFC fight tonight in 254 and catch me tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern for Game 4 of the 2020 World Series between the Rays and the Dodgers. You don't want to end up missing that. That will be live here on the Spotlight Sports Network. Take care, everyone.